Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week, more on vaccine distribution on the continent as Africa expects millions more doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Plus, Nigeria's fight against insurgency gets a boost with the arrival of the first 6 of 12 Super Tucano military aircrafts from the United States. Our exclusive interview with the new Director General of the Nigeria Institute for International Affairs, Professor Hossein Sage, continues. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. We'll be right back after a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles. Another Nigerian Diaspora Day has held over the weekend, attended by Nigerian dignitaries serving in different international organizations, civil society organizations, government officials, and Nigerians from all walks of life. The celebrations held on location in Abuja, the FCT, and virtually. One of the focal points of the discourse was diaspora voting come 2023, the production of vaccines in Africa, and the economy.
Make it possible for INEC to be able to conduct diaspora voting when INEC feels that the infrastructure is ready and they are ready to go ahead. And we hope and pray with the National Assembly that as they embark on amending the Constitution, we plead with you to make it possible for our millions of brothers and sisters to vote.
They are contributing a lot. If we are sending $20 billion plus into that economy as remittances every year, why can't we vote? Even if we are not sending anything, we are Nigerians. So many people vaccinated in the developed countries and only a small percentage in Africa or developing countries. And the issue is how do we improve or upscale the vaccine production so we can make more? How do we even shift the production to African countries? And what I'm trying to do is leverage that to actually work with companies, to persuade them that, look, if we work with you to monitor supply chain and flow smoothly, remove export restrictions, can you invest in our countries?
U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman arrived in North China's Tianjin municipality on Sunday for a 2-day visit. China's Vice Foreign Minister Xi Feng, who takes charge of China-U.S. relations, holds talks with Sherman, as does the Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has weighed in on the situation in Afghanistan, saying the Afghan leadership is consolidating its forces around the key population areas. Insecurity has been growing in Afghanistan in recent weeks, largely spurred by fighting in its provinces, as U.S.-led foreign troops complete their withdrawal, and the Taliban launch major offensives taking districts and border crossings.
I think the first thing to do is to make sure that they can slow the momentum and then be able to put themselves in a position where they can retake some of the gains that the Taliban, some of the ground that they've lost. So I think from my engagements with the Afghan leadership, they are committed to that, and so. We look forward to them making progress. They have the capabilities, they have the capacity to make progress and to really begin to blunt some of the Taliban's advances. But we'll see what happens.
Finally, UNESCO has added Madrid's historic Paseo del Prado Boulevard and Retiro Park to its list of World Heritage Sites on Sunday. The tree-lined Paseo del Prado, in the center of the Spanish capital, is home to the Prado Museum, while Retiro Park, just off the Paseo del Prado, is one of the city's most visited attractions. Welcome back. From this week, Africa will begin to receive the first batch of 400 million doses of vaccines from Johnson & Johnson. So says the AU Special Envoy on COVID, Strive Masiyiwa. The continent is already facing its third wave of the pandemic, with at least 1 million cases added in the last 1 month.
According to the coordinator of the African Union Task Force on Vaccine Acquisition, Strive Masiyiwa, the 400 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine begins arriving this week to help curb with the third wave of the coronavirus. Only about 60 million doses have been administered among a total population of 1.3 billion in African countries. Johnson & Johnson will be used to immunize half of the estimated 800 million people in need of the vaccine on the continent.
The African Union has purchased 400 million doses. 220 million has been paid for. 180 million is an option we trigger in September if the orders have come in. I'm pleased to say that African countries have ordered and placed pre-orders in excess of 400 million doses.
Around 6 million doses will be delivered to 27 nations that have paid their share through the end of August, with another 18 finalizing loans from the World Bank and other global lenders before they make payment. Deliveries will rise to an average of 10 million a month from September, increasing to 20 million in January until the order is fulfilled by September next year. J&J, whose vaccine is administered through a single shot, will ship the doses from a facility in South Africa through its partnership with Aspen Pharmacare.
We prefer that they license producers in Africa rather than to produce under contract, because we want to be treated the same way as they produce in India. Okay? If they can produce under license in India, they should be able to produce under license in Africa.
Meanwhile, Pfizer and BioNTech have struck a deal for South Africa's BioVac to help manufacture around 100 million doses a year of their COVID-19 vaccine for the African Union. The deal is to fill and finish the vaccine, the final stages of manufacturing where the product is processed and put into vials. It does not cover the complicated processes of mRNA drug substance production, which Pfizer and BioNTech will do at their own facilities in Europe.
Our transaction is the first in Africa, and it's actually the first in Southern Hemisphere. And I think that's significant. It's based on our capability that we have had thus far. And for Pfizer to entrust us and their partners, BioNTech, to entrust us with a fairly new and complex technology that, quite frankly, only in December was it proven that it actually works. And therefore, 6 to 7 months later, for us to be able to announce this type of transaction on the latest technology, that is also making a big impact on the pandemic, I think is historic for an African manufacturer and for us as a continent.
But the World Health Organization is calling for more effort on the continent on surveillance and COVID-19 prevention measures. Last week, WHO Regional Director for Africa called on African countries to step up monitoring and prevention efforts, as this development may be short-lived. Citing a surge in COVID-19 cases across other parts of Africa, she said the number of COVID-19 cases in Africa has exceeded 6.2 million, including over 159,000 deaths. As at last Sunday, Africa reported more than 282,000 new confirmed cases.
Let us be under no illusions. Africa's third wave is absolutely not over. The small step forward offers hope and inspiration, but must not mask the big picture for Africa. Many countries are still at peak risk, and Africa's unprecedented third wave surged up faster and higher than ever before. The Eid celebrations, which we mark this week, may also result in a rise in cases. We must step up surveillance and be prepared. We must all double down on prevention measures to build on these fragile gains.
The Delta variant of COVID-19 has been found in 26 African countries, while the Alpha variant has been spotted in 38, and Beta variant is spreading in 35 countries. Lack of vaccines and public confidence in vaccines have led to the low vaccination rate in Africa. The continent currently has 1.7% of the total doses of coronavirus vaccines in the world, while the average doses per capita in high-income countries is 62 times of that in Africa.
On Thursday last week, Nigeria took delivery of the first 6 of 12 A-29 Super Tucano planes in Kano City, with the remaining 6 expected in October. For 12 years, the country has battled insurgency, which has spread from the northeast to the northwest and giving rise to banditry activities in the country.
The 6 A-29 Super Tucano planes landed on Thursday afternoon in Kano City and were received by the Nigerian Minister of Defense Bashir Magachi and other military chiefs. The U.S. State Department approved a $593 million sale of the light attack aircraft to Nigeria back in August 2017 to further the nation's campaign against the militant Boko Haram group. Nigeria had been seeking permission from the U.S. government to buy the A-29 since 2015, but the Obama administration put the sale on hold due to concerns about Nigeria's human rights record. And then in February 2017, then U.S. President Donald Trump signaled his support for the sale in his phone call with President Muhammadu Buhari, and in April of the same year, the deal seemed to have moved forward. The U.S. government said then sale of the aircraft was just one element of its effort to fight terrorism and protect civilians in Nigeria and other areas of West Africa. And besides the aircraft, the U.S. government said it was supporting Nigeria with trainings, munitions, related equipment and maintenance support. Security expert David Otto says the aircraft are essential to fighting insurgency and patrol Nigeria's porous borders.
This Super Tucano A-29 aircraft, are, of course, they're combat aircraft, essential in any kind of warfare. They're very good during the day, during the night, in very bad weather conditions. They will survive and maneuver. So I think it's essential that the Nigerian army has this in their toolbox. They've been used by U.S. special missions, successfully in different operations. So I guess that with the amount of money, some quarters saying about 9 to 12, 14 million US dollars per each of these aircraft, I think it's an essential tool to fight against counterinsurgency, but also to patrol the porous borders and deal with the counterinsurgency, not just in the north, in west, in the northeast, but throughout the country, which, if it's required.
He still believes in multidimensional approach to fighting insurgency.
Most communities do not want to see these criminals being rehabilitated or reintegrated within the same communities where they've carried out these criminal acts, especially when the communities themselves, have not been able to see any kind of improvement on the security situation. So I think what the government needs to do is to be able to look at various ways of reintegrating criminals and also terrorists in different locations, which, are a lot more safer. But it still comes down to educating the local communities on the importance of reintegration and rehabilitation. Left without that, I think it would be a tough situation for the government.
The Super Tucano is already used in Brazil for border patrols and in other countries including Afghanistan, Colombia and in Indonesia. Adding to the insecurity challenges in the country is banditry and kidnapping, causing great concern for the government despite promises to tackle insecurity. Last week, the police and government authorities held the release of 100 people, including women, children and nursing mothers, who were kidnapped from their village in northwest Nigeria over a month ago. According to the police, the released captives had been abducted on June 8 from Manawa village in Zamfara state. The government says their release was secured without any financial or material gain. Lagos-based consultancy SBM Intelligence estimates that kidnappers took over 2,300 people captive, demanding billions of naira.
Welcome back. Last week, we kicked off our introduction of the new Director General of the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs, the NIIA, Professor Hosal Saye, taking him up on a number of issues. This week, we continue our conversation as he talks about the new improved NIIA, which he says never lost its place in helping to build Nigeria's foreign policy.
I'm sure that, wherever foreign policy is mentioned, wherever international affairs, is mentioned, but especially wherever engagements, that have had very useful outcomes for Africa's relations with the rest of the world, wherever those things are mentioned, the NI has a pride of place. So at 60, it's a time not only to beat our chests. 60 is a survival threshold that you have crossed. It means that you have survived and you have stayed very strong and able. So for all these reasons and the global reckoning that the NI has had, the input the NI has had to Africa's search for betterment all the time. What today the Americans like to call shared prosperity and stability and peace and statecraft and diplomacy in all of those ramifications. 60 is definitely a big landmark.
How significant is it for you being here at this time, this iconic moment for the NIIA?
Just one of those, shall we say, cross-bearers. Looking back at the pedigree, a very strong pedigree of the NI, and climbing on the back of giants and all of those people that have been here before me. You see, the lineup is huge, and formidable. Going through the years, from the 1960s through the 1970s to the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, it's with, all of those nostalgic feelings, that all of us in the NI remember, not only the founding fathers, but all of the directors general that we've had.
Let's talk about the EFCFTA. Nigeria conceived the idea of it. When it came time to put pen to paper, we pulled back. And now, other countries took the lead on, ratifying. Thankfully, now we have. But are we still providing the leadership on EFCFTA? Are we still, at the forefront of this?
The process, of ratification is something that, you don't just wake up and sign up for. I mean, like I say, it's a new dawn, in what we are doing. We are now a lot more introspective. We're a lot more, we look at those things and see. You see, let's put it this way. For a long time, the kinds of things that people were used to was if Nigeria was confronted with a situation because we were big brother, because we were, seen in that mode, we will just jump up and say, even the gaps and so on, we'll fill them. I mean, but times have changed. I mean, we ourselves also now know, that we may not say Nigeria first, as an anchor for our policy, but we cannot run away from it. So we have to weigh, we have to, look at all of those things and at least have a reasoned position on the kinds of things that we're doing.
You have mentioned restructuring. So what's the NIIA position on that?
Well, NIIA has not had a colloquium on restructuring. But remember that as long ago as 1978, the NIIA convened a conference on federalism. And at that conference that long ago, Sir Shidrath Ramphal, who was Secretary General of the Commonwealth of Nations, made a very profound statement, that I think is very fundamental to any attempt to understand the length and breadth, the width, and all of those things that go with the present debates on restructuring. Sir Ramphal said, and you will find that in the book that NI subsequently published, Regions on Federalism. He said, countries that adopt the federal solution or the federal system do so in accordance with the circumstances of their countries. So for every country, your own true federalism. There are no two federal systems that are exactly the same. I mean, it is the circumstances of your country, the demands, of the constituent units and the kinds of, formations that they have that determine the kind of federal system that you would have. But that conference in 1978 also made the point that federalism is not a system that you adopt once and for all. Federalism is a living system, and as a living system, it responds, to the changing, nature of societies. And as the nature of societies change, the federal instrumentalities also change. So that's why they say that restructuring is an integral part of the definition of, federalism. And what we are doing in Nigeria, therefore, what we have observed and what, has gone on, it's not an aberration. It's not, in line with what that conference found. Every country responds to changing circumstances, changing demands.
Is the NI also discussing the Twitter ban? Because for many countries of the world, some of our allies have said this is an infringement on fundamental human rights, the right to free speech, rights to association. And then there are others who say that they're praising Nigeria's decision because they say Twitter has positioned itself like a pseudo-government.
Even though rights are universal, there are contexts, that come into, even the conception of rights. There are sensitivities, there are peculiarities, there are challenges. I mean, I imagine that, in situations of very serious conflicts, some of those rights would be compromised. But that's in the order of things. And the Twitter debate, the social media debate is not only in Nigeria today, it's in many other parts of the world. And again, this is something the world is learning to live with. And the question is, how do you relate this to the overall, frame of, freedom?
I want to talk about Nigeria's relations with China. And that's because it's pretty concerning, for some of Nigeria's allies who say that, Nigeria really needs to be careful how it relates with China because China is making lots of investments in Nigeria, not just Nigeria, into African countries. And there's a fear of China taking over.
In the past, we had notions of Chinese businesses being more affordable, for instance. And these things are always relative. So they are the attractions. And the point is nature abhors a vacuum. At a point when Africa was not getting the kind of help to solve some of these problems, it was the time that China moved in. Now, people talk about China's records of, human rights, and so on. Yes, those are things that must come up for consideration. But the way the world is, you make your choices. And those choices are governed by the kinds of interests that you have and the kinds of problems you want solved. I mean, nobody is going to come to Nigeria to do things free of charge for you. There's no way that can happen. But we are also told, that the terms and conditions also differ.
This is where we end the program for the week. Remember, you can watch this again as well as previous episodes on channelstv.com. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.